So, are you on the same page when it comes to what retirement is going to look like with your spouse? If not, it's time to talk. Listen and watch today's episode as we explore why it's so important for couples to have some detailed conversations about finances and what your future retirement's going to look like. We're going to cover exactly what you need to discuss and how to handle any disagreements because we know there's going to be a few along the way. Let me grab Scott and we'll get started.
Let us help you reach your peak in retirement. It's time for Your Retirement Elevated.
Scott, we got a great topic today. We're going to be talking about couples and financial and retirement planning. Before we dive into the questions people need to be thinking about and asking and the answers, I'm just curious, out of all the clients that you meet with, how many are in a relationship, are doing this couples planning when they meet with you for the first time? What's the percentage versus folks who are just already kind of solo at that point in life?
I would say that the vast majority, I would
Okay.
say, 3/4 are, couples.
Yeah.
And then, as our, as we've been doing this a long time, the unfortunate part of this is we do have, clients that, lose a spouse.
Yeah.
And that's usually when we find, we either lose a spouse and then we kind of step in and serve at a higher role, for the surviving spouse. Surprisingly, around 70 to 80% of females after a divorce or losing a husband leave their financial advisor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we're going to talk about being a team sport and are you on the same page? And mostly we're talking about you and your significant other. But that statistic tells me that my profession does a lousy job
Yeah.
of communicating with both parties in that marriage, in that relationship. We're very fortunate, knock on wood, that we're not part of those statistics. We do not tend to lose clients when we lose a spouse. So,
Yeah.
so I'm excited to talk about this today.
Let's jump in. So, first of all, I mean, why can't the husband just come in and take care of it all? Why is it important in the first place that couples work together on their retirement plan?
Well, I think that one of the stark realities is that most females are going to outlive their husband.
Yeah.
If
The
you're
statistics
married,
show that, right?
statistics show
easy.
that. I think it's a 3 to 4, like average female is going to have outlived their husband by 3 to 4 years. So in that period of time, you don't want to be learning about the ins and outs of your plan. And not saying that everyone needs to understand every detail. I have married couples where the wife is the driving force. She is the CFO of the family, and the husband would be the one that's lost, if she wasn't around or if she didn't have us, to kind of take that position if we lose a spouse. And that a lot of the time, that's what happens is someone comes in, and if they're really great at managing their finances, we're there as insurance if something happens to them, because they want a relationship, someone that a firm that they know they have similar ideas, ideals, and beliefs. And they want to make sure that those things continue if they're not there to kind of be the captains of the ship.
Yeah. I mean, it's hugely important to get on the same page. We could just continue to probably list reason after reason, and I think they'll come up as we go through the show today. Do you find that as you're meeting with couples for the first time, have they already done some of the homework? Have they already talked a little bit about their plan before meeting with you? Or is it sometimes the very first time that they've had a real conversation about their finances and their future? And is it necessary to be on the same page before they come in to meet with you? Like, what do you prefer even?
Well, I think the families that tend to gravitate towards us have had good communication, or at least the habits of being great savers. So they've put money away. They've kept their debt under control or have eradicated it, and so they're usually good with that portion of it. But where people are usually coming to us is to help navigate this. Well, how do we start spending this? How do we manage the taxation on this? How do we put a plan together to guard against healthcare expenses in retirement? What do we do to keep up with inflation? What if we live a long lifespan? Those are the things that tend to be in the back of each person's mind in that couple,
Okay.
that they don't always talk about it out loud.
Yeah.
And where we're coming in and going through a process to help facilitate those conversations, so we can make sure that everyone has kind of said what's important to them, what's keeping them up at night. And so we know it's important, because a plan, again, is to simply take you from where you are today, your current situation, and move you to the ideal situation as quickly as possible, removing as many obstacles as possible, and taking the hassle factor down as much as possible. And so most people aren't having those conversations, and we provide a place for people to do that initially, and then ongoing through proper planning and discussion.
Here's the big question then, Scott. And I love that couples are often on the same page when they meet with you on the big stuff and maybe the broader things. But when we start getting into nuances, that's where we've got to bring people together. Couples are not always going to agree on something. Don't know of many couples out there who do. I don't think there are any.
How fun would that be?
Right. Yeah. We want to argue a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do people tend to disagree about the most when they're meeting with you, and how do you navigate those conversations?
Hands down, the two things that people are different is their ability to tolerate the fluctuation of the value of their money.
Okay.
aka risk.
Risk. Yes.
And so, and it doesn't need to be male or female. It says one or the other has a higher risk appetite than the other person. They're able to see things vacillate more. So I think that's the biggest disconnect. And again, a good plan will always provide a smart place to take money from, no matter what's going on, and provide cash flow, especially in those go-go years, that first 10 years or so, from a pretty stable, predictable spot, a strategy. And so what we tend to do is, the person that is more conservative, we take care of those fears through making sure they understand where cash flow is coming from, right? And then the person that likes risk or can handle more of it, we're trying to put as much money outside of that pool of money that provides their income in a situation that makes them happy as well.
Okay.
For example, we've got a client, actually their retirement lunches today.
Okay.
And he goes, "Hey, we're taking your advice. We've got all these trips planned. But before we go," his wife said, she'd like to sit down and just go over the plan again to make sure we're going to be okay. She just wants to make sure it's crystal clear, because if something happens, so there's an example of plenty of money saved. They've already taken steps to do the things they want to do, but it becomes real now, and she wants a refresher before they start gallivanting around doing trips. So that's our job. That's our job, is to, inject confidence into the situation, build a solid plan, and help people understand, hey, you're in a good spot, and we've got enough room to be flexible, and you're going to be good. You're going to be okay.
Is your retirement journey truly tailored to your needs? In his book, Exceptional Retirement: Tools and Strategies for Retiring on Your Own Terms, Scott Dugan addresses the crucial questions all retirees ask. Discover the power of a clear financial decision-making process that can prevent major retirement mistakes and unlock exceptional opportunities. In the book, Scott outlines 4 essential questions that guide retirees toward successful outcomes. Don't miss out on key insights that could define your future. Available now on Amazon. Click the link in the description of this episode to get your copy of Exceptional Retirement.
I love it. I think that's great that you are able to recognize where people disagree and then solve that problem by seeing, all right, what's ailing you? Where do you need more confidence? But then maybe that person on the higher side too, pointing out to them maybe pitfalls in their attitude of like, well, actually, if you take this much risk, I mean, here are the true consequences of this. Do you realize that? Can you grasp that? That's a great way to find those middle points and get people on the same page, which is the whole spirit of this discussion.
Absolutely. And the second one would be healthcare costs,
Okay.
Independence later in life. A lot of not disagreement, but differing opinions from, in a relationship.
Yeah, what do you mean? Like people think they're going to end up in a different spot than the other, or one wants to bury their head in the sand about it?
Yeah, that will never happen to me.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, that's mostly dudes.
Yeah,
That's us guys. That'll never happen. I'll be fine. Oh, if that happens, I'm going to go ice fishing. Well, that's not, that's not a good plan. That's not going to make people feel good. And so I think that long-term health care, it doesn't mean that you have to have long-term care insurance, anything like that. It's just, let's have a discussion on what's the financial and physical and mental impact on the spouse that's not receiving care. And can your plan absorb it? For most of our clients, they can. For one that are a little extra cautious, we'll put a strategy in place.
Okay. Excellent. Last question for you, Scott. Just kind of a casual ender here, but I'm interested in your advice in this. For a couple that's thinking about retirement and saying, all right, we need to get on the same page, whether it be about the big stuff or getting into the nuances with your team, what would be your advice to them? Next steps that they could take or how they can broach this conversation and just get a little bit further along the line of getting on the same page with one another?
You can tell what's important. I learned this from a mentor years ago. In someone's life, two main ways: what they spend their money on and what's on their calendar.
Okay.
Those are more enlightening than anything because you're spending money on something. So obviously there's value to you in some way. And if you're scheduling it, it's important enough to put on there.
Interesting.
And a relationship, especially a marriage, and something I work on as well, and I'm not great at it, but I try. But having time, and I learned this from Jordan Peterson. He is probably one of the sharpest minds right now in our time, I would believe. And he said that to have a successful relationship is that there needs to be 60 to 90 minutes of dialogue, uninterrupted dialogue per week for most couples. Meaning it's not both sitting watching TV and simultaneously checking, social media.
Right.
It is sitting somewhere without those distractions, talking about what's on your mind, what's important to you, and making sure that we are on the same page. And what do we need to do for each other to make sure we're on the right path? And so it is literally scheduling it on the calendar and potentially going to a place where you're not going to be interrupted and just having those discussions. To me, that's the best way to do it. And then if you take that more like running a business, in a business, you usually have weekly team meetings. You may have quarterly longer meetings, bigger planning sessions, and there's usually an annual review or annual planning. Well, if we know that's what it takes to run a successful organization, why not apply some of those things to our personal lives? Because we've proven that works in the business world. Let's apply some of those to probably the most important endeavor in our lives, is that relationship and that person that we've chosen to spend our lives with.
Man, couldn't say it better myself, my friend. That was well put and a great way to, I think, end this episode, and gives me the perfect segue to say, there you have it. Schedule time to talk with your spouse about your financial plan, about your goals and your dreams in retirement. Go ahead, do it right now. Schedule that time. And then as soon as you're done with that, schedule time to meet with Scott and his team. And that way they can go into the nuances and start talking to you about all those other moving parts that come along with financial and retirement planning. You do those two things and you're going to be well well on your way to a solid financial future. So if you want to get to that part 2, where you're scheduling that time to meet with Scott, 2 ways to get in touch. You can call 913-393-4724 or go online to listentoscott.com and have a conversation through the website, schedule your time to visit, and get in touch that way. Scott, love the episode today. Thanks for all your help and guiding couples through retirement. And we'll look forward to catching up with you next week.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time on Your Retirement Elevated. Take care.
Investment advisory services offered through Elevated Capital Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Are you on the path to retirement but feel uncertain about your direction? Don't let myths and misconceptions cloud your journey. Before stepping into a lengthy retirement, gain clarity and confidence with a complimentary financial review. Schedule a conversation with Scott Dugan. It's completely free. Just click the link in the description below or call us at 913-393-4724. Let's start a conversation about what's most important to you as you plan for a successful retirement.